So yesterday I did a live stream about my Excel DCF, and I mentioned if anybody wants the model, just let me know, and email me, and I'll send it back to you. Oh boy! I always find a formula that was incorrect. Every time, there's so many formulas that you're bound to. I mean, this is minor. It's just the name of the company. It wasn't linked properly. Now I'm on my third version. I just sent it out yesterday, the first version, and now I'm already up to my third version. Because I added 2 Excel models, so now I have 3 tabs on my Excel model. Yesterday when I sent it out, it was only this first tab. The example I did was meta, but now I added a second tab, and I just shot a video, so I'll probably I'll edit it probably today, and probably tomorrow I'll post it. But I added a second tab for negative free cash flow. What do you do if a company has negative free cash flow? Hey, David, what's up? And then I did an 8-year model, because sometimes you want to go beyond 4 years, because in my regular model, I predict 4 years of future free cash flows, and then I do a terminal value. But now I'll go through the model. Hopefully people have received the model and used it, and they may have questions. So there's no model, there's no discounted cash flow model or any model that's going to predict a stock price. It's not possible. It might predict sometimes it might predict it. I've predicted stock prices, but you might get lucky. Just like if so I was just going to walk through it, but let me know if anybody received the model, if anybody has questions, and I'll show you. Can someone pick a ticker? And ideally a company with negative free cash flow. Doing it, the Excel document was a homework assignment. It's going to be a lot. It's not going to be that straightforward. Of course, I made it very easy to use, because all you have to do is put stuff in a blue box. But to understand everything, it might take you a little bit, especially if you're not comfortable with Excel. But in order to build these models, you have to be really good at Excel and really good at financials. And of course, and you got to make a lot of mistakes. That's how I was able to build it and make it user-friendly, because I made all the mistakes to learn the process. That's the only way to learn, is you make a ton of mistakes. And then you learn from the mistakes, and you keep kind of improving. RKLB. Okay, so I just want to show you, because that's it. It works. The DCF really only works, like a regular DCF only works for companies that have positive, consistent numbers. How do you predict RKLB? How do you predict it if they have negative numbers? There's just going to be a little more kind of assumptions, but I just want to show you an example. Oh. So, okay, they have negative. I mean, if it's negative every single year, that does add another layer of complexity to it. But if it's just negative in the most recent year or the most recent 2 years, there's different approaches. So I'll just show you, because should I have negative? Yeah, so that's a good one. RKLB. Like if you go to like a website and you plug in numbers to their DCF model, there's no way for you to manipulate the numbers, because there's never like a guaranteed consistent growth. Like that's what these models do. They assume if the company grew 10% last year, the model assumes they're going to grow 10% every year. There's always this like guaranteed at some point, it's just assuming a consistent number in perpetuity, which is never the case. So that's why the Excel model helps you. And that's why I built these two next tabs so people can do a little more kind of digging. You could, if you're good at Excel, then you don't need me to like build these tabs. You could probably, with the first Excel model I sent you, if you're good with Excel and you kind of understand how it works, you can just do it yourself. But not everybody is fluent in Excel. Okay, so RKLB. See, I messed it up again. Only in the blue box. Don't touch anything outside the blue box. Actually, this would be better. Let's do my 8-year model. I think my 8-year model would be a little better. Yeah, the 8-year model is good. Okay, so RKLB. 9.5 billion. So market cap 95500 So that's 9.5 billion because everything's formatted to billions. 1730, $19 a share. The reason we put the market cap and share price is so we can calculate the shares outstanding. Because when we come up with the value of the company, the value in today's dollars, we have to divide it by shares outstanding. And just email me. I'll put my email on the screen. Just email me if you want a copy of the DCF. I'll make it bigger so you can see it. So that's my email. Okay. So email me if you want a copy of the model. So now we just need the revenue. So we'll go back to Yahoo Finance. We'll go to financials. The reason revenue is a good tool because revenue can't be negative. It could be zero. It can't be negative. So if we assume they'll continue growing their revenue at a similar rate as they're doing now, then we could just apply a percentage and assume they would convert that percentage of revenue to free cash flow. So yeah, so they went from 245 million to 363 million. It's a pretty good growth. That's a 48% growth. So obviously no company can grow 48% forever, but maybe they'll grow 48% over the next 5 or 6 years. Terminal value growth, I usually use 2.5. You want to use usually between 1 and 2.5. And for the WACC, you could just go to Finbox, or you can just pick a number, like 8 or 9 is about average. So yeah, so their middle is 9.5. Let's use the mid WACC, 9.5. So all you have to do is just put numbers in the blue boxes. So I added these blue boxes, and I'll show you what we're going to do with this. So here's the rub, is that it's negative. So you can't predict negative free cash flow because the value of the company would be negative if they continuously converted. Right now, just to help you visualize it. So this is their most recent revenue and the most recent free cash flow. So the way every model works is so in the trailing 12 months, they had 360 million of revenue, negative 144 million of free cash flow. So they converted negative 40% of their revenue into free cash flow. So obviously you can't use that as your future amount, because the price will be negative. So you have to assume at some point they're going to have positive free cash flow. Let me just get the date in here. Always keep the exchange rate of 1. So this is where it's hard, because so I'm assuming they're going to grow at 49%. And this model goes at 8 years. So if they grow their revenue 49%, they'll hit 8.7 billion in 8 years. Hey, what's up, the Quags? Good to see you. But the model uses that negative 40%. It assumes Bulldog, thank you. I appreciate it. The model assumes, like every DCF, they're going to convert negative 49% of their revenue to free cash flow. So it just gets worse as time goes on. So one thing you could do is apply. This is why now you have to get into like the Excel formulas, because I can't make every single scenario, because there'll be like a million Excel models if I made every single scenario. And the average company converts about 10% of their revenue to free cash flow. That's about average. So we can use that. Let's say in the 5th year, they start generating positive free cash flow. So we're going to now I need to build a 4th model. Now there's always so many different scenarios. Okay, I'm glad I did this stream. Let me update something on the formula. Let me go to my version 2 of the DCF. Would you mind looking at AVB? J. Okay. I'm using version 3 version 1 is the one I sent everybody. Version 2, I just finished cleaning up version 2, and I shot a video. This is version 3, which is kind of a work in process. So it's not definitely a done deal. Okay, so if it helps, I know that RKB has the most used rocket outside of SpaceX. Okay, so this is what we did. This is kind of what I do in every video that I make, but I've done it so much now. So in order to predict the future free cash flows, which is up here, we first have to predict the future revenue, which is right here, and then convert what percent of their revenue will they convert to free cash flow. Well, in the next 4 years, we're keeping it at negative because the company has been negative for pretty much since the beginning, right? And then we're going to assume in the 5th year they have positive free cash flow, but we're going to continue growing their revenue at that 48% level because that's what they've been doing. But this box down here, you can alter the percentage. So if you think 48% is too much or too little, so each year, say maybe after like 4 years, you're like, that's a little too high, 48%. I think 20% is more reasonable. So you can just lower it to 20%. And now the growth is 20% until the 8th year. But in order to really kind of do this kind of manipulation, it is good to read about the company and the industry to have a sense of where you think the revenue will go. And you can't grow it forever. I remember, what was it? I can't remember maybe like Peloton, like they had, I don't think it was Peloton, but anyway, they were saying like, we're going to sell 1 million units. And then in their model, like they did, like in perpetuity, they had to grow 10% as if they were going to grow so in year 2, they would sell 1.1 million units, and it grows 10% a year in perpetuity. Okay, so So you with me, right? Okay. So in their model, which makes sense, 10% growth. But if you actually do the 10% growth, like in year 2, in 2027, they would sell 1.2 million. This is like when they were a lot earlier, and they said this was the model they used to predict how successful the company would be. So it seems reasonable if you keep going out, right? 2.4 million. Like, it's not crazy. But does anybody know what's going to happen? Like, where the problem is going to lie? And of course, they're not saying over 100 years, but the spreadsheet highlight or note the fields that are assumptions. Yeah, it's pretty much anything in the blue box is what you want to alter. And this blue box for the revenue. But I'm going to have to build, I mean, there's so many variations. It could get real confusing, but I have to build another model where you can alter the free cash flow. So it seems reasonable, right? Like, if the company's successful in 30 years, yes, it could sell 6 million bikes. But if you keep growing it in perpetuity, at some point, you know, in 2086, now you have to sell a bike to every single person in the United States. You have 330 million. And at some point, if you grow at 10%, it's not sustainable. So you have to kind of limit it. At some point, you're gonna have to sell a bike to every single person in the world. Granted, this is far out, but that's why when you do these models, you can't have a defined growth, especially if it's so high. You can do 10%, even 20, 30, 40% for a number of years, 5, 10, 15 years. But at some point, you can't grow at that level. Like Google, Meta, they're really big companies, but there's only so many people in the world they could sell to. So yeah, I think the video I made will make it a little clearer. But what I showed in the video I made, I'm gonna send it out tomorrow. I show you how to put it. It's just the same way. You put everything in the blue box, and then you just assume at one of these years they have positive free cash flow. Well, it's just like, yeah, you can't, even if you have great customers, if you can't grow at like 5-10% every year, because eventually you'll be bigger than every other company in the world combined. Because the U.S. government, that's why inflation is like 2.5-3%. So you can't really grow beyond inflation, because at some point you'll be bigger than the U.S. economy. But yeah, let me work on the model more, I guess. Every time I look at it, I realize, oh, I have to tighten this up, or but yeah, okay. So I guess check out the video. I'm gonna probably edit it right now, and tomorrow morning I'll send it out. Yeah, but feel free to email me if you want a copy or if you have questions. Okay, I'm gonna get going. I think this needs a little more work, the more advanced models. Like I can do it. Like, I know how to like move the numbers, but I have to build it for someone that doesn't know how to go into these formulas and cells. So that takes a little more kind of time. Okay, thanks a lot. I'll talk to you later.